Good evening, and thank you for joining us for this special edition of CBC Nova Scotia News. Tonight, we'll look back on some of the biggest stories that made headlines in the province this year. From the worsening crisis in health care and housing to deadly natural disasters, 2023 is a year many of us will remember for its challenges, but also for those who rose to the occasion to help their neighbours in need, showing once again how Nova Scotians come together in times of tragedy. As wildfires raged in parts of the province this past spring, thousands of people were displaced from their homes. Many got through it with the help and support of community volunteers. That includes volunteer firefighters who played an important role in fighting the massive wildfire in Shelburne County. When the fire broke out, several new volunteers joined the small department at Gunning Cove. The CBC's Shayna Luck brings us the story of one man who stepped up to help his community but lost his own home in the process.
It's hard for Casey Dominguez to come back to the site of his house. He remembers the morning he stood here at the head of his own driveway and the fire was coming. Now, this is what's left.
It was emotional, but the adrenaline was so high that I kind of blocked it out, I guess.
As soon as the fire broke out, the fisherman of 10 years joined the local volunteer fire department. For days, he spent his time trying to save other people's homes.
I knew that I couldn't worry about my house. I had to try to save what we could save.
In the end, he lost the house, the garage, and the family cottage. He also lost $250,000 worth of uninsured fishing gear. These metal lobster traps were once stacked higher than his head, now melted into a pile by the heat of the fire.
I guess we had hopes that DNR and the water bombers were going to stop it, and they couldn't. It was just too big.
In Gunning Cove, the department has 20 people and 3 trucks. Eric Jeffrey is a volunteer in the same department.
It felt like you were driving through hell.
He's fought fires for years, but not like this.
It was just fire on both sides of the road as far as you could see.
Volunteers played an important role in wetting down houses so the flying embers couldn't catch.
I've done forest fires before, but normally you're just trucking water to DNR, you're dropping it in their tank and away you go. But this one we were the front line.
Dominguez says the community rallied together, and he says it's important they keep sticking together.
These are volunteer fire departments. They didn't have to be here. They could have left at any time, but they stayed and continued to fight.
Some fishermen have already offered him some replacement gear. He takes comfort the department saved more houses than were lost. He intends to rebuild on the same spot. Shayna Luck, CBC News, Carleton Village.
Not long after the wildfires, Nova Scotians had another natural disaster to contend with. The historic July floods took the lives of 4 Nova Scotians and caused major damage to homes, businesses, roads, and bridges across the province. In the weeks following, one small community in East Hants came together to help out a man who lost everything. As the CBC's Josh Hoffman tells us, the man is not only fortunate for the support of his neighbours, but he's lucky to be alive.
Christopher Gillis is looking at what's left of his home in South Rawdon, where he's lived for nearly 40 years. Gillis has cerebral palsy and can't talk or hear very well, so he was sound asleep during the record rainfall in July and had no idea there was nearly 20 inches of water in his house. Gillis's sister, Rosemary Furlong, lives next door and called him worried because the stream that runs between their properties was raging.
He's saying the water twisted the bridge away from his property, so he was trapped. He couldn't get off of where he was.
Emergency responders had to rescue Gillis from his home, which is damaged beyond repair. The brother and sister have lived in the area for their entire lives and say they've never seen it rain quite like that.
Yes, we have floods, and yes, there's a lot of water in the brook, but nothing like, nothing. And I hope never to see it again, because it was terrifying.
As everyone was assessing the damage in the days following the storm, word of what happened to Gillis quickly spread around the community. Since then, thousands of dollars have been raised for him.
Everybody knows Chris around here, and we've known him for years, and we love him. And He's just a part of our community. And, you know, life's not been easy anyway for him, so let's make it better.
McCabe helped organize a dance and auction at a local fire hall last weekend. She says she was taken aback by the turnout and the generosity of the people who came and opened their wallets for Gillis.
It takes me back, way back, to when I was a kid, when every community pulled together like the community has this time for Christopher. And it's just overwhelming support is just, and that's the only word I have, is overwhelming for both of us.
Furlong says a tiny home for her brother to live in has been purchased, and he should be ready to move in by Christmas. Josh Hoffman, CBC News, South Rawdon.
There have been countless discussions this year about how to improve health care in the province, and staffing is always one of the key challenges. So it's a major bonus whenever registered nurses are recruited. One of the province's newest nurses is marking that milestone after arriving as one of the first continuing care assistants under a federal program for skilled refugees 2 years ago. Gareth Hampshire has her story.
Working as a nurse is what Agnes Lamoro has always wanted to do. Here she is at Aberdeen Hospital in New Glasgow, where she works on the surgery unit. She's now licensed as a registered nurse just a couple of years after arriving in Nova Scotia as a continuing care assistant.
I just can't still believe that 2 years down the line, I'm right at this place where I am right now. Given that before that, I really did not have anything to look forward to.
She grew up in South Sudan during the Civil War, which forced her to leave for Kenya. That was more stable, and she went on to get a nursing degree. However, because she was a refugee living there were other barriers to actually working as a nurse.
You have all these dreams and aspirations, but you kind of don't get to put them into, what you love doing.
She's doing it now. Lamoro, who's 29, moved to Canada under a federal program for skilled refugees, initially working at a long-term care home as a CCA. As an internationally educated nurse, she qualified for another program, this time offered by Nova Scotia Health. The pilot bridging pathway has allowed her to gain her nursing credentials.
We have reduced those barriers for people to come into the health system and bring their expertise.
Having that space to kind of be given that opportunity to, do what you love doing, regardless of where you come from or your status as a refugee, it really means a lot.
Lamoro and other internationally educated nurses, or IENs, are already making a difference to the staffing situation at Aberdeen.
With the influx of IENs, we've been able to fill many of these vacancies, which has really helped to boost staff morale, and it's certainly improved patient care as well.
It's taken a lot for her to get here, and she's not forgetting those who helped her along the way, including many people at Nova Scotia Health.
Just knowing that I'm also contributing positively to the community.
She has other goals now she's a nurse, thinking about doing her master's and continuing her training to maybe become a nurse practitioner. Gareth Hampshire, CBC News, New Glasgow.
Housing is another major issue that's been top of mind for many Nova Scotians. As rents continue to skyrocket, the number of homeless people in Halifax doubled this year. With shelter beds scarce in the city, a growing number of people have been staying in tents at a ball field in Lower Sackville. But a group of neighbours say they couldn't stand by and watch people sleep outside, so they've banded together to lend a hand. Nicholas Sagan has that story.
You want to take this? There you go.
At this ball field, a group of volunteers has become a lifeline.
They do a lot for you here. You can pick out clothing if they fit you, and they have groceries for you, and, a lot of donations.
Close to 40 people live here, some recently evicted and some homeless for years. With shelters beyond capacity, around 200 people in Halifax are on the streets with nowhere to go.
We called all around for other shelters, but there was none vacant. So they gave me a tent and an air mattress, and that's what I came with.
This group of neighbors decided to do something to help. They started a Facebook group that now has more than 5,000 members. It offers help with hot meals, laundry, housing, and donations, even raising puppies born at the field. Now the group is a registered nonprofit called the Gated Community Association.
It was a moral obligation. When you see the tremendous need that is taking place here, you can't walk away and not think about it.
Though they feel compelled to help, they say there are too many gaps to fill on their own.
We're just regular people who are, working full-time jobs and have our own responsibilities. And frankly, this is, we're all paying our taxes for the government to do this for us.
The Nova Scotia government recently announced a tiny home village to be built at the ball field, along with 100 temporary shelters in undecided Halifax locations. But the Gated Community Association wants more communication about where people will be moving and when. The volunteers say they want to work together with government and continue to be part of the solution. Nicola Sagan, CBC News, Lower Sackville.
Amid the climbing cost of living and growing food insecurity in the province, one program is hoping to teach young African Nova Scotians about farming and agriculture. There are 5 community garden sites across the province, and when it's time to harvest their crops, the young growers come together to decide the best way to get the food into the hands of the people who need it the most in their community.
We're planting beans. They're this kind of beans I haven't tasted before, and I want to taste something new. It's nice to meet new people and become friends. I'm thinking about becoming a farmer to grow plants and help other people because I like helping people.
I planted carrots and peppers. I'm really excited for the peppers because I love peppers. I just kind of eat them a lot. They look really delicious.
What kind of stuff would you like to grow on a farm?
Watermelon, corn, strawberry, cabbage, and lettuce, and tomato.
You just start sprinkling them on the row, and how you just kind of use a rake or something to make little rows so you could just sprinkle them in.
So the program we have going on here is Youth and Agricultural Program for African Nova Scotian kids. So the goal of the project is that we expose and engage African Nova Scotian youth in agriculture. It teaches our youth how to grow their own food, but how to grow nutritious food that's good for us. What I want them to take away is that it's attainable. Attainability is attainable, and that gardening is something that we can do and we can grow, and then there are careers that are profitable as well. But I want the kids to, at the very least, enjoy it. I want them to look back years later and say, okay, I was part of this youth program and it kind of shaped me.
It kind of just makes me feel good inside that other people like me are doing the things that I'm doing. So I just feel really empowered.
Food insecurity is a big issue for us, but we feel that if we empower the youth to be interested in growing food, they will help within their communities to grow small gardens and also create jobs for others within the communities.
Welcome back. Nova Scotians will never forget the horrific events that unfolded in April of 2020 when 22 people were killed in a violent rampage. Residents of Portapique are still trying to heal from the mass shooting that tore their community apart. In March, nearly 3 years after the massacre, the Mass Casualty Commission released its final report. Among the 130 recommendations is for a program to be funded in Portapique and neighboring communities to improve mental health, grief, and bereavement supports. Kayla Hounsell has more.
So you come into the front doors here.
Erin McKinnon says building this community hall was a project designed to build people up after their collective safety had been shattered.
There's still moments of insecurity, of course.
McKinnon lives in Portapique and was here the night one of her neighbors went on a rampage, killing 22 people, some of them her friends. Some people here felt they had to attend the release of the Mass Casualty Commission's final report. Others couldn't.
I knew that would trip me up. And it would be really hard for me.
But she says people she trusts were following closely. People like Alana Hurdle, who was in the room.
It was so quiet, it was almost eerie.
She says it's appropriate the report is a scathing rebuke of the RCMP.
You hate to say that the system fell down, but it did, completely.
McKinnon says she agrees a complete overhaul of policing in Canada is necessary.
It's the system. It's definitely the system. If they need more training, if they need more understanding, then they need to put those things in place.
The commission also found there is a public health emergency in the communities most affected, the result of an unmet need for mental health support arising from the tragedy. A situation still so urgent, the commission wants the federal and provincial governments to create a program to address it within 1 month. It's the very first deadline in the report.
It's not easy to seek help, but it's really not easy when you go for help, it's not available to you.
She's calling on governments to implement the recommendations, but says building this hall to help the community move forward is her focus.
We want people to grow here, and we want to give them hope.
Kayla Hounsell, CBC News, Portapique, Nova Scotia.
Welcome back. For 2 weeks this summer, Nova Scotia welcomed thousands of young athletes from across the continent to compete in the North American Indigenous Games. It was the largest gathering of Indigenous people Atlantic Canada has ever seen. But the Games weren't just about competing in sports. As Brooklyn Curry tells us, different cultural demonstrations were happening every day to share knowledge about Indigenous traditions.
Outside this tent at the Cultural Village, Mi'kmaq elder Ernest Johnson is preparing strips of wood. Inside the tent, his life partner transforms them into beautiful, handcrafted flowers. It's one of several cultural demonstrations set up during the North American Indigenous Games. A few tables away, Mi'kmaq artist Ashley Sunnypass is weaving baskets.
I like to call basket making community art because there's people that go out and prepare the wood. Then there's people that go out and pick the sweetgrass, and then there's others that have all of that in front of them and they weave it together.
Different demonstrations are happening every day at the Cultural Village, from basket weaving to beadwork to hide tanning. NAG organizers worked hard to ensure this year's games were an even split of sports and culture. With more than 750 nations from across Turtle Island, it's an opportunity not only to gather and compete, but to learn from each other.
I had groups of children that were out in front of my desk asking all the questions, touching the wood, and that's probably my favorite age group to teach is the children.
We're going to give them the information. We're going to give them the tools, at least to have a shot at the next life, so that our grandchildren and our children yet to be born will have a shot at enjoying all of life's gifts.
That's Cree elder Gary Joseph. He's telling stories through leatherwork. Part of his display includes this belt he created for his wife, who's on a journey of recovery following her second cancer diagnosis.
So this design does signify the 7 districts among the Wabanaki territory of the Mi'kmaqs, of which they are part of. There is a circle, and a circle is like a medicine symbol. So when we gather in circles, we share medicine with each other.
Also in a circle, Joseph leads a smudging ceremony. As the smell of burning sage and cedar fill the air, more visitors to the Cultural Village file into the tent to check out the demonstrations. Brooklyn Curry, CBC News, Halifax, Jabuktuk.
Well, there are fans, there are super fans, and then there are the kinds of fans that dedicate almost every waking hour for a month to build a replica of an iconic vehicle from one of, if not the biggest, pop culture representations of Nova Scotia in recent memory. Our Allie Thompson went for a ride in Ricky's car from Trailer Park Boys. We'll leave you with that story. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. We hope you have a safe and happy holidays, and good night.
Let's go for a spin.
Okay, sweet.
Shades on. Better buckle up here.
Yeah. I think the car kind of speaks for itself. It definitely is kind of iconic, I guess, kind of monumental of sorts.
It's got a very iconic name, doesn't it?
Okay, so it's the mobile. Some of you guys might have recognized it off the TV show called Trailer Park Boys. And yeah, it's probably the coolest car I own. So this all stems with meeting John Dunsworth for the first time. So my girlfriend at the time surprised me and her with tickets to go see their stand-up comedy tour. And then afterwards, we ended up meeting them out back. John Dunsworth actually drove my car around the parking lot and took us to this after party. And I asked him, like, hey, what would it take to be an extra on the upcoming season, which was season 11 at the time? And he said, you know, find out when and where we're filming and show up. Like, I'll find you a spot. He ended up getting me into the whole season 11 aspect. I'm in season 11 for like 4 seconds, which is kind of cool. And the mobile was there on set, so I grabbed all these photos for references. And honestly, if it wasn't for John, I wouldn't have been able to quite get as much detailed damage as I was able to. You know, me making it happen. I got bus drivers honking at me. That's awesome. Bought 5 cars to build this. I spent the whole month of April, 14 to 16 hour days. Yeah! Woo! You know what? The response over the whole car and just how like it's received from the public, it's pretty amazing. And honestly, I'm glad I chose to build this as a replica car, because they actually came to me and asked me if they could use my car for their upcoming film, Bubbles Rockers.
Just stay calm, Julian. I'll take care of it. Just don't say anything. How's it going, guys? Filming a little documentary here for Life Network.
It's kind of like Cops
from the
criminal's point of view. Yeah.
So what's it like seeing this replica?
I know he's not going to let me take it for a drive, but like my wallet's not far, we'll see. You see a lot of movie cars and TV cars, and some you don't think people would do, and this guy didn't make a mistake one little bit, I don't think.
Why? Built it for the fans. Miles per gallon. I probably got the best rate out of everybody. Contributing back to the Trailer Park Boys community and the fans of the show, and I just enjoy making people happy, and it's a great time.